So we're going to go back to this slide, and I want to thank Miguel and Brendan for inviting me and for helping me with all this technical difficulty. I found this prayer today that I wanted to pray for strength and confidence, and because I'm nervous. Listen, I'm really nervous. I know this material backwards and forwards, but I've never done a live webinar before, so you all just please pray for me as we're doing this. But the slide you see up here is a connect slide that I want you to consider if you are on Twitter. The hashtag is InviteWelcomeConnect, and my Twitter handle is @GatheringLeader. We've got Team Jesus with ECF, and then the @ECFVP. And then on Facebook, please friend me at Mary Foster Palmer, that's P-A-R-M-E-R, and make sure you like ECF's Vital Practices page and the Episcopal Foundation as well. So please take note of those and connect with us. I am not on Instagram and Pinterest yet, but it's in my near future. And I'm going to keep it back on this screen for a little bit so you can just get that information and connect, if you would, as I begin to talk to you about the Invite, Welcome, Connect work. The first thing I want to do, though, is I don't have this up there as a slide, but what I want you to do is think of these questions. If you're in a group, jot them down, or if you're by yourself, jot these questions down, because this is how I start off every single training that I do, every single meeting that I've had over the years. And these are important questions that you can connect with other people. You can connect, you'll see this in the material tonight, where you can really connect with newcomers who come to your church. The first one is just ask them their name and ask them to tell you what part of the country that they're from. What part of the country did they grow up in? Did they grow up going to church? Did they grow up Episcopalian? Are they a cradle Episcopalian? And take note of that. And if not, did they grow up in another tradition? And what was that tradition that they grew up in? And then you might ask them, how did they come to be an Episcopalian? How did they wind up in the Episcopal Church if they're coming from another tradition, or if they didn't grow up in a church? How is it that they came into the church? How did they become a Christian? And so those are really good, solid questions that I always ask. And we'll talk a little bit about that further as we get into this. So I'm going to answer those questions for you first before I get started and kind of go into the material with you. I grew up in Natchez, Mississippi. And I don't know if any of you have heard of Natchez. It sits up on the Mississippi River Bluff. It's a beautiful little town. It's sort of a baby Savannah, baby Charleston. I grew up in a Southern Baptist home, and my father was a deacon, and my mother was a Sunday school teacher. And actually, I tell people, I was the middle of 5 children. I tell people that we had a drug problem in our home. We were drugged to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. We were always there, but our home was a very hospitable one. So we had a lot of the visiting missionaries and pastors stayed with us. My family were very hospitable. And I grew up, went away to college, went to Mississippi State for a while, got married. Then we lived in different states along the South. I wound up in Beaumont, Texas in the early 90s and went through a divorce. I was raising a 16-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter. I opened a business recruiting physicians, got very active in the community, was still Baptist, was a member of Calvary Baptist there in Beaumont. And I happened to find a wonderful Episcopal therapist who really shared with me a different books about Henry Nouwen's books, and C.S. Lewis. And then one day, I was sitting in my office, and I got a phone call from a woman by the name of Sally Dooley. And Sally sat on the Symphony League board with me, and she invited me to church. And it happened to be an Episcopal church, St. Mark's Episcopal Church. So I went to church with Sally. And it was the first time I had ever experienced worship in a liturgical setting. And it really had a really big impact on me. I didn't understand the worship. I didn't understand anything about the liturgy. I didn't know even to call it liturgy. But I knew that it had an impact in my heart. Over the next year, I really worked through a lot of healing around some childhood issues and my divorce. And about a year later, in the summer of 1996, I went to a Young Life meeting. I was on the Young Life committee. And my Young Life leader said, didn't you go to an Episcopal church a while back? And I said, yes, St. Mark's. And he said, I go to a little small Episcopal church, and I'd love for you to come. We have a new rector. He's from Alabama. I think you'll like him. So I went. And Patrick Gahan, it was his first church parish as a rector, and he, I was in his first confirmation class, and so I shared with him that I had a real sense that God was calling me to ministry. What does that look like? And I wound up, after 10 years, at the beginning, I wound up becoming a director of adult ministries and evangelism, closing my business, and working there for 10 years as director of adult ministries and evangelism. Now, the thing that really is most important about my story that I want you to hear tonight is that Sally Dooley really is an introvert and was an introvert. And the reason she picked up the phone and called me that summer of 1995, Bishop Claude Payne was casting his vision for the Diocese of Texas. He was the new bishop in the Diocese of Texas. He told everyone to go home and just invite someone to church. And Sally did that. She picked up the phone and she just called me and invited me to church. And so I really am grateful for that. I'm grateful for Bishop Payne asking everyone to do that at that big gathering in Houston where, he was casting his vision for the Diocese of Texas. So after 10 years on staff at St. Stephen's in Beaumont, I felt God calling me once again out into another adventure. I moved to Austin, Texas. I sold my home, moved to Austin, Texas, and enrolled at St. Edward's University, which was founded by the Holy Cross Brothers, founded Notre Dame. Went full-time and got a degree in religious studies. And when I was getting ready to graduate, in the spring of 2009, I got 2 phone calls. One was from Bishop Claude Payne, and Bishop Payne had founded a group called the Gathering of Leaders, and it's a group that empowers the young Episcopal clergy of our church, and they needed a director. The group had been founded in 2006. The administration for it was taken care of at the National Cathedral for a while, and then the Diocese of Mississippi. And so they asked me to be their part-time director. At the same time, I received another phone call, and it was from the office of Bishop Andy Doyle. He was the new bishop for the Diocese of Texas. And Andy Doyle was in a conversation with Mary McGregor, who is the new, they just named her canon for congregational development and evangelism. And Bishop Doyle and Mary McGregor were talking about what could they do about how our churches are declining, and what could we do around newcomer ministry and welcoming people into our church. And Mary suggested that Bishop Doyle hire me to create something to help our churches. That little church, St. Stephen's, that I belonged to with Patrick Gahan back in 1996 had grown about 300% in a 5-year period of time. And so what we did back in 2009, they gave me 4 congregations to work with. And those were going to, we established that these would be my pilot congregations. We called it the Newcomer Ministry Project. And as I began looking at what this would look like, we pulled on more congregations joined us. And today, here it is, May of 2014. We've probably had, I started doing trainings early on at the Diocesan Center, both in Houston and in Austin, as I was creating the material and adding to it and adding resources and then using the material, testing it in congregations. So we've probably had around 300 or so people who have come through the trainings, both clergy and lay. Bishop Doyle has invited me to our clergy conference over the last 3 or 4 years, and I recently, just a couple of months ago, I did a workshop for the Consortium of Endowed Parishes out in Atlanta. But I've taken the work now in one form or another to 8 different dioceses, actually 9 different dioceses as of last weekend, and I'm scheduled to take it to about 8 more before the end of the year. The biggest thing, first of all, that I want to say about this work is there are no magic bullets. You know, there's nothing magic about this. There's nothing new. What I have created here is really, I've just really pulled together a lot of information that's already out there. And I've pulled together the resources, and actually I've just made it Episcopalian. One of we've had some amazing results, and I think the amazing results in growth have come from the congregations where the clergy are on board, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, where the clergy really get it, how important this material is, how important each one of these essentials. I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But one of the quotes that I want to tell you right off the outset here is that one of the first churches I worked with was Calvary Richmond, and Mary McGregor and I went and did a workshop with them. This was back in late, I guess, December of 2011. They had a brand new rector, Paul Weiner, and Paul said, Mary, come and test this material on us, because I've created a way to use it in kind of a creative, interactive way. And so we did that. We went to a leadership retreat, and they had probably 55 or 60, and we met with them on a Friday night and a Saturday. And this is what Paul said about the work. He said, the exercises we did with the Newcomer assessments brought new energy and spirit to the congregation. They bought into what it would take for a needed culture change. Okay, they bought into what it would take for needed culture change. The reason they bought into it was because the new rector was on board with it, and then all the leaders were there, and then they used the material, and I'll talk about how I suggest that you use this material to create energy and excitement. That little bitty small church, that first year, 2012, grew by 60 new members. My pilot congregation that I call my star congregation, St. Francis in Houston, grew by 142 new members the first year in 2012, where they really began using all the material. So those are just a couple of stats that I want to tell you about. And the most important thing is that what Paul said about what it would take for a needed culture change. Because I think that what this work does, it goes deep. It runs really deep into the culture of a congregation, and helps the congregation really change to be more about inviting, welcoming, connecting people. Then I want to tell you right now also that one of those dioceses that I've taken this work to is just weekend before last. I went to St. Peter's in St. Louis, Missouri. Luke Jernigan is one of my gathering of leaders, clergy. He invited me up. He had heard me do this workshop at SEEP, at the Consortium of Endowed Parishes. And what the Diocese of Texas hired a videographer. The videographer videotaped the whole day of training. And so Forward Movement, within the next couple of months, we will be turning all of this over to Forward Movement. They will be actually publishing training videos so that you can take the material and take the videos, the training videos, and actually have me there doing the training. And within embedded in the videos is then what you do with it on the creative side. So what I say to churches when they first look at the material is, and I'm doing a training session, is I say, okay, I just want you to use your holy imagination, to imagine the limitless possibilities for each of your congregations. no matter the size. No matter the size. We've got this thing called a small church club, a little church club here in the Diocese of Texas, and the only people that can come to it once a year is congregations that have 45 people or less. And, my goal is to eliminate the little church club in the Diocese of Texas. But anyway, the little small churches can use this material all the way up to St. Martin Episcopal Church in Houston, which has 8,000 members. And I've created it that way. What I say is to use your imagination, just to imagine the limitless possibilities for each of your congregations. No matter the size, to think outside the box. And I want you to hear this, really hear what I'm saying to you. To risk failure for the sake of implementing something new. It's hard. It's hard to risk trying a new ministry. I learned that. I learned it way back from Patrick Gahan. Let's try something. Let's get creative and try something. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, punt. Try something else. I believe we need to create an environment in our congregations where creativity is honored. Where creativity is honored. This isn't rocket science. It was great for me to be able to say that when I took this to St. Thomas Huntsville. They're the pilot congregation for the Diocese of Alabama. And, of course, I was sitting in a room full of real rocket scientists and just got a great laugh. But it's practical stuff. There's nothing new here. I ask congregations to think about when they're looking at the material to make it real and relevant for you, real and relevant for your context. With all our context and our cultures and our congregations are different, to think about what's working, what's not working, what is needed, to think about maybe reimagining a ministry that you have, possibly, that's maybe revision it, recreate it. And so then as I began looking at what this would look like, the first thing I did, I had been doing a good bit of consulting for our diocese for a while. We require when a rector leaves that a church consider looking at their mission statement, their vision statement, their core values before they call a new rector. So I had been doing that work for a while. So the first thing I looked at was what would be the vision statement for this. And this is the vision statement that I created for the Newcomer Ministry Project, cultivating new practices of invitation, welcome, and connection that are rooted and grounded in the gospel of Jesus Christ will transform our congregations and help shape an authentic culture of effective newcomer ministry. Excuse me just a minute. The next thing was, actually this all kind of came about at the same time, the vision statement, the core values. As I began doing the work, I began just kind of pulling it together. The next really important thing is to look at core values. And if you've done this work in your own congregation, you understand the importance of this. So the first core value is common sense, to be prayerful, right? We need to pray that God gives us the heart to reflect God's gracious invitation and welcome. It's not our table to which we're welcoming people, it's God's table. I have a great theme song, and I typically play it when I go to trainings. It's the Blind Boys of Alabama on their duet CD. It's called The Welcome Table. It's a great song. The second one is intentional. We must intentionally nurture a commitment to newcomer ministry. We have to think systematically. We have to think with process and organize systematically. I have a sign here in my office that says, God is in the details. There are a lot of little details in this material, but we have to be intentional with it. The third one is relational. You'll hear me say a little bit more about this in a little bit. It's critical. The way we close the back door in our congregation and really empower people for ministry is to be in relationship with them. The fourth one is accountable, and I have Bishop Claude Payne's picture here on the slide. He and Barbara received an honorary doctorate last year at the Seminary of the Southwest, and it was Bishop Payne who really helped me get this core value. He wanted to see the material a couple of years ago, and I sent it to him, and he called me, and he says, Mary, so you're holding these pilot congregations accountable. And I said, well, you know, Bishop Payne, they're really accountable to the diocese, not to me. But anyway, bingo, Bishop Payne, that's it. You just named the fourth core value. But the sense is with this accountable core value, though, is that we're accountable to God. You know, we're accountable to God. We're accountable to each other. We're accountable to the gospel. And then as I really began doing the material, working with the material, I ran into all sorts of challenges, and I don't have time to go into those challenges right now. You'll see that if you take a look at the training videos. The challenges are numerous. The first one is complacency, and I believe that complacency is our prevailing sin in the Episcopal Church. The second one is action. You know, at the end of the day, it's not what we say, it's not what we speak, it's what we do. It's how we model the word. The third one is fears and assumptions. There's lots of people that are fearful. You know, they're fearful that the church might grow too big for them, that many people like the size of church that they have, where they know everyone. There are all sorts of assumptions. I will tell you just one. You know, I went to lunch with a rector at a pretty large church when I was beginning to use this material, and he said, Mary, you know, rectors at churches our size don't want a program pedal to them, and it was upsetting to me. You know, I laugh about it now. I can say I called Bishop Payne, and he said, you know, he just doesn't get it. The thing is that you'll see this material is not a program. It really isn't. Invite, welcome, connect. It's gospel. The obstacles are another challenge, and you're going to run into obstacles as well. One of the biggest obstacles that I've seen in every single congregation I've worked with is what I call, and you know what they are, the sacred cows. And you all have sacred cows in your congregations, and you just got to creatively and lovingly address those sacred cows. As I began looking at the material and trying to figure out how was I going to pull this off and pull it together as I began working with these churches, because Bishop Doyle's first assignment was just for me to work on the whole welcoming piece and welcoming people into our congregations. But as I began looking at pulling it together, I thought, you know what, if we don't do the invite piece and get them here, then what difference does it make how we welcome them if they're not coming in the door to begin with? And then as I really began to work with the churches, I looked very closely at the back door, what I call the back door, closing the back door. So I just created these three essentials, and I think they're all essential. You can do two of these great, and one of them, you know, not so great, but they're all essential to this work. Invite is essentially evangelism. You know, it's that E word that Episcopalians find so hard to say. It's just purely evangelism. What I do with the checklist and with the training is I give you tools to help your congregation with this, tools to help us Episcopalians with this. The second one is welcome, the ministry of hospitality. The third one is connect. And I lovingly, lovingly call that closing the back door. The reason I call it that is because it's my experience, not only in the Diocese of Texas, but outside the Diocese of Texas, that as many people, particularly in the medium to large-sized churches, as many people go out the back door as come in the front door. And so I call it closing the back door. So then the first is invite. I use the scripture of the Great Commission, and it's, you know, go therefore. It's that scripture in Matthew, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The invitation, this invite piece, essential, it's really about inviting people not just into a relationship with you and your congregation, but into a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And that is what invite is all about. The personal invitation is the most effective. And what I do with this material is, as I said, I give you tools. I give you tools. The research that I have found says 3 out of 4 people who do not attend church say that they would come to church if someone bothered to invite them. 3 out of 4 people say they would come to church if someone bothered to invite them. And the average Episcopalian invites someone to church once every 37 years, about once every 37 years. So what we have to do with the Invite Essential is to create a culture of evangelism. And I have found we're going to stop just a second for just a minute and a half right now. And I want you to look over here at the web link where it says video, awkward, invites, goulash. And Miguel, do we need to tell them how to do this and click on that video? It's a minute and a half, and I want you to watch this video. It's put out by a company called Skit Guys, and it's probably one of the best invite videos that I've seen that works for this particular essential. Can we do that now?
Kelly, you're on mute.
Thank you. So just click on the link in the chat box and then let us know when you're done in the chat box. Sorry.
What do you think? Has it been a minute and a half?
Almost. So I think people should be wrapping up soon. It looks like folks are coming back. So, yeah. Yeah.
Done. Great. Okay. So it was hilarious. Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? That little video, you can buy it from skitguys.com for only $9. And so it really is a good little video for you to show. What I do in the training sessions is show different videos for each of the essentials. And I have the deep truths of each of these essentials. The deep truth of invite is courage versus fear. It's just courage versus fear. The welcome essential is the ministry of hospitality, and I use the scripture in Romans. Welcome one another, therefore, just as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God. And as I was putting the slide together, I thought, you know what? You see that sign that we have, the Episcopal Church welcomes you? My vision for this is that we have a sign eventually that says, the Episcopal Church invites, welcomes, and connects you. The welcoming essential, I think many of our churches do welcome well, and then many of them don't. You know, what I say about this is that we think of ourselves as a friendly community when in reality we're only a community of friends. We think of ourselves as a friendly community when in reality we're only a community of friends. And if you don't believe that, look at where the people in your congregation go during the coffee hour or any kind of fellowship. They typically go straight to their friends in the room. They don't go to the stranger. They don't go to the stranger in the room. And I have story after story after story after story that I tell about times that friends of mine and clergy friends of mine and lay people and even myself, story after story of going to churches where people just don't see me. They don't they don't see me. And so I think that the biggest thing about welcome is that we see the people that come into our churches. I found a blog written by Daniel Simon. He's up at Trinity Wall Street. He's an associate rector there at Trinity Wall Street, and he was doing some training with his greeters and ushers there. And he wrote a wonderful blog, and it's linked in the material that I give you. And he says, greeters and ushers are God's stand-ins and ambassadors. He says, because you're standing at the threshold and you're the first person that people speak to when they enter, you hold a huge amount of spiritual power because you're the first person they meet. People will project onto you all the assumptions and expectations they've gotten about God before they ever walk in the door, positive or negative. How you respond to them will either challenge or reinforce those assumptions. So your actions of welcoming them may make all the difference, not only in their experience of your church, but even of divinity, even of God. So we're God's stand-ins and ambassadors. When I do the training, I talk about, I show another video, a training video of people coming into an organization, and then I talk about my own experience with my family and how we had a pretty heartbreaking experience of going to a church where people didn't acknowledge us or find out who we were. And so this is a poignant, important piece, essential, that we really see the people that walk into the doors of our church, because we don't know when they're coming into our church on a Sunday what brought them there. We don't know what's going on in their lives. There's an old saying by a Greek philosopher, and I don't remember, maybe it's Philo or Alexander, says, "Be kind, for we're all fighting a great battle." And so we don't know. But I will tell you this: if someone shows up at your church on a Sunday, I believe the Holy Spirit brought them there, and it's our job to be in relationship with them. Not to beat them over the head with a prayer book or to swamp them like we're trying to sell them a used car. But we are to be kind and be gracious and be in relationship and get to know them. I also say that many times we don't even know what's going on in the lives of the people sitting next to us. So this welcome piece is really, really important. And it's important for us to look at it. The deep truth of welcome, it's seeing the other. It's seeing the other. The last essential is connect. And I am passionate about connect. As I said, it's really closing the back door. It's about helping people understand membership in the Episcopal Church, helping people discern what their gifts are. I use this scripture. I love this. In Paul's letter to the church at Rome, he talks about, in this particular passage, he talks about this motivational spiritual gifts that we have, and it's, I probably am going to embarrass myself here. It's teaching and exhortation, which is encouragement, and giving and administration and mercy and serving and prophecy. God, I'm 7. And so the most important piece of this is with the spiritual gifts is that we help people discern what their gifts are, and so that we help them discern what ministry maybe that they could move into. And it may be that the people that are coming to our church just need to be ministered to. Maybe they need whatever's going on in their lives. We need to enfold them with our Episcopal love. But this is so important. I took an inventory back when I was Southern Baptist, and it said that my number one spiritual gift was exhortation. And then I was asked to teach a group of ninth grade girls at a large church in New Orleans. And, I felt like a failure. I got out of it after a couple of months. It wasn't until I became Episcopalian and I went through Community of Hope training to become a lay chaplain. Took another inventory. My number one spiritual gift is exhortation, which is encouragement. And it's encouragement. And so this is important. I have a young intern who's helping me right now with Gathering of Leaders, and I'm going to see if she won't help me design an strictly Episcopal spiritual gifts inventory. We'll see what happens with that. Connect is empowering laity for ministry. This is a really important part of this, is really empowering lay ministry and helping people understand how important it is for them to use the gifts that God has given them in the body of Christ. And it may be that many people are sitting in the pews of our churches who really don't even understand what gifts that they have that they could offer to the church, the body of Christ. The big piece that runs through this and the deep truth of Connect is what I call the sacred act of listening. It's just that we take the time. And remember those questions that I gave you at the beginning of the webinar? So when we started doing Newcomer cafes, coffee, every month or so at St. Stephen's, we would just sit in a circle and just ask these questions. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up going to church? It's really listening to people, because you must listen to them and get to know them and hear their story and find out why they came to your church to begin with. So the deep truth of Connect, sacred act of listening. I put this slide up here, relationship, because this relationship is critical for doing any of this work. And I offer these questions to you that people are asking when they come into your church on a Sunday. They're asking, where do I fit in? Can I make friends in this church? Is there room for me relationally? Does this church need me? Can I find a place to belong and serve? Am I safe here? So it's important. It's important that we listen to people, we hear their story, we help them discern their giftedness. It's so, so important. And then many times I end my training with just saying, just imagine, I ask you to use your holy imagination. Just imagine the possibilities for the Episcopal Church if we really lived into our calling to be fully engaged in living out God's transformative mission of hospitality to the world. I want to just give you a little glimpse of, we've got a link over here, Newcomer Ministry Project link. All the materials that I've created are in I have checklists for all three: Invite, Welcome, Connect. And when you click on this Newcomer Ministry Project, which is epicenter.org/newcomer, it's over there in your web links, it takes you right to the Newcomer Ministry Project web link on the Episcopal Diocese of Texas website. And when you scroll down, you'll see, first of all, you'll see an overview of this work. You'll see a YouTube video. There's a YouTube video of me giving an overview for this, and it has embedded videos in it, and it was for the Diocese of Alabama last year for a leadership conference. It was their keynote address. But what I have they're all interactive checklists. So when you click on that website, you'll see it'll say Invite Checklist. Be sure not to click on the picture right now. Click on the link where it just says the words Invite Checklist, and it takes you to the Invite Checklist. And then this is just a taste of what you'll see there. I have tools, and then you'll scroll down to Idea 2, resources, I have, check marks where boxes where you can check and sort of do an assessment. And then I did the same thing, and it's a lot longer than this, than what you see here. I did the same thing with welcome, starting with first impressions, going through, and I do the same thing with connect, and the same, it'll be the same process. Everything is really interactive, so you can go in, and then it connects you to the websites or to the resources. I also have a church school for those of you who might have schools. The St. Francis there in Houston was my largest congregation. They had the largest school of any of our congregations in the Diocese of Texas. I'm not sure about around the country. They are attached to St. Francis Episcopal School, which is the largest, I believe, Episcopal day school in the nation. I may be wrong about that, but at the time, when I first started working with them, they had 853 students. And they are the ones who actually created this checklist. And as I said, there's a lot more information than what you see here. And they're the ones that actually came up with all the things on the list. And when they started out, I believe 10% of those students were members, and it grew real fast. I think it was 20% within 6 months, and it's more than that now. And the last slide I have, and then I'll open up for questions. When I presented this work just a couple of weeks ago, I was asked by our diocese to present this material to our first-time in charge rectors, and we had a fairly large group of those first-time rectors come to Camp Allen. And one of our first-time rectors is Les Carpenter, who's taken St. Aidan's from being a mission to a parish. And Les, he sent me this email afterwards, and after he had heard about this material, and he said, Mary, and this is what he wrote, and I love it, and I want to share it with you. He says, connect, the connect essential is where my heart is. All three are invaluable, but to me, invite is like buying the paint. Welcome is like pulling out the canvas, and then connect is where the art is. It's how the painting takes shape. It's in blessing each other's gifts and finding belonging that we discover the beauty in every contour of the body of Christ. And so I'm grateful to Les for that, that quote. And then I believe the last slide, this just has my email address. It's just marypalmer@gmail.com, and it has the link to the materials that I was just telling you about. In those materials, there's a toolkit that even tells you, there's a toolkit with all sorts of ideas. And then the last slide, I believe, is the Episcopal Church Foundation links. Miguel was kind enough to ask me to write an article, or he pulled an article from our Dialogue magazine, I think a couple of years ago, Miguel, and it's called At the End of the Day. It's on this Vital Practices website, and it really kind of gives a sense of, it gives you an overview of as I began creating the work. It's just an article I wrote on the material. So what I would like to do now is field questions from you. If you have any questions or insights or comments. The only thing I failed to say, let me just say this right quick and go back to invite. The invite materials, it includes not just tools and ways you can invite the whole community. It includes community and who you are in the community, and there's a big section on communication, your website, social media, how important those are, to the invite piece, the welcome piece. The welcome essentials does the same thing. It takes you from first impressions to greeting and welcoming to follow-up, to how do you do that follow-up, how do you get information. It includes training and with all different sorts of ideas. And then the connect essential does the same thing. It goes from connecting, how do we do this, how do we make sure that people are connected into ministry, and there's clear pathways to belonging, empowering laity for ministry, and so forth and so on. So I wanted to be sure and go back and tell you sort of what those things include. So let's open it up for questions.
Sure, and Mary, I just want to leave your contact information on the screen as we get some questions initially, so
Okay.
we'll have plenty of time to get that.
Okay.
So we want to, as Mary said, open it up for questions. Really, the best way to ask a question is through the chat box, or to ask a question or to make a comment. This is clearly an overview of a lot of tools and resources that have been developed and are available for free currently on the Diocese of Texas website. And so this is a great chance to ask Mary questions about how to use the tools, questions about challenges, etc. So, great.
Hi, is there a solution to a church that doesn't want to grow? Angela, I think that once Forward Movement comes out with the training videos, it may be that you get those. I have no idea. I believe they're going to be real reasonable. I don't know if we're going to sell them to dioceses or individual congregations. I think maybe, having your congregation, getting the leadership together and asking them to watch it, or even just watch that YouTube video. I think that the way I've addressed this at one of the last dioceses that I went to, there was a woman on the vestry that said that to me. I like the church the size that it is, and what I said to her was, I wouldn't be here today if St. Stephen's Beaumont had felt that way, and if Patrick Gahan, the clergy, the rector, had not been so on board with wanting to welcome people and invite people there. So I think it needs to start with the clergy. I think I said that already. I think that this work, my bishop says this a lot, leadership flows downriver. So if your bishop doesn't really get it, that he wants your clergy to get it, your clergy don't get it, then your vestry and it just flows downriver. So I've worked with some churches where the clergy aren't really interested. They're not interested in growing the church. So of course the vestry and the leadership, it's hard. It's hard. Other questions? Let's see.
So there's one question which I can at least help address, which is Leslie Stott asked the question, where do I get a copy of the slides? So on the lower right-hand corner of the screen, there's a files box and with the PDF. So you can click on that and download a copy of the slides. We'll also be sending a copy of the presentation to all participants after this is done, along with the recording. So.
And Candace, the Lutheran Spiritual Gift Survey is one of the links that I have in this material. I have a Lutheran one and a Presbyterian one. I particularly like the Presbyterian one because it's the one that you remember, the motivational spiritual gifts. And so as far as I know, there's not a published Episcopal one, and that's why I'm interested in having one created. And then Barbara, what welcome tools do you feel are the most effective? I think really just look at the material. I think that it's important that you have greeters, not just ushers. I think that's one thing. And have your greeters. I have a greeter usher training PowerPoint that I would be happy to send to you. Anybody, really. Just send me an email to marypalmer@gmail.com, and I think we're probably going to put this, we'll embed this in the material. We need to go ahead and do that. But I think that watch the YouTube video that's on the diocesan link, epicenter.org/newcomer. I think watching that, you're going to see a training video used by a corporation. I think even that helps. That will help people to understand how important welcoming people and really making sure that people understand how important that is in our congregations. Fine line, welcoming a newcomer versus making a newcomer feel overwhelmed. Yes, I do. I do have advice on that. And I really talk about this in the training. I think we need to honor people who just really want to come to church and maybe not even want to give us their information. Maybe they want to visit a church for a while and not, you don't want to be pushy with it. And I think that comes in the training of your ushers and your greeters, that they can be gracious, but not overwhelming. And it is a fine line. We don't want them to feel overwhelmed. What else? Any others?
Mary, I'm wondering if you wanted to mention anything about the high-level assessment that we sent out to folks.
Okay, so that was sent out. It's a high-level questionnaire, and it's a series of questions. I think I use that. I tell people to let that kind of be the first thing that you have your leadership look at. If your clergy are clueless about this work, have them just look at that and answer those questions and see what happens. That's really kind of the first glance of something, of this material. Just answering those questions, have your vestry answer those questions, or your bishop's committee. And I think what it does, it'll give you a real sense of what's to come with the material itself. Because what I do then is answer those questions. I help people answer those questions within the material for themselves. Yes, what else? Do the training videos give a step-by-step approach to introduce this ministry to parish? Yes, they will, Thomas. What I did, and this was just last weekend, not this weekend, but not this Memorial Day, but the weekend before that, up at St. Peter's in St. Louis, the videographer took lots of video and did B-roll, and I don't understand all that technology, but he even took me telling them what to do next, because what I do with this material is and you'll see it in the training videos, I do an overview, which is what that video on YouTube is, just the overview, okay? I do an overview first. It kind of gives a broad overview of the material, and then they take a break. So you need to do this like on a Saturday. So they take a break. They come back, and then I do a short, maybe 15 minutes on the invite essential, and then I break everybody up into small groups, 5 or 6 people to a group, and I give them big Post-it notes and markers, and I tell them I'm going to give them 20 or 30 minutes just to kind of go through the assessments and come up with ideas, and just write each idea that they come up with on a piece of paper. These are fresh ideas that they're coming up with, and once you kind of look at the material, you'll see, because one of the things on the invite checklist is to creative ways to invite the whole community. And I just tell them to think of all the kinds of ways that the whole community can be invited. Because for us Episcopalians, I think it's a lot easier to invite someone to, say, an art show or a concert, or, I've got a whole list, a community festival, or a farmer's market that's on the grounds of your church, or a pumpkin patch, or whatever. But the important thing is that you have something for the people who come to take home with them. And one of the things I recommend are these little things, what I call Moo cards. It comes from a company called moo.com, and you can put 50 different pictures of around your parish, around your church, on one order of cards. And on the back of it, I suggest that you put your website and information about your church, or even the worship time. So what I do is, and then the whole thing because we get into the communication piece, and I tell them to come up with ideas around that. And then at the end, I do the same thing for welcome, same thing for connect. And at the end, we post all those on a big board, or we put them on the wall. And then I give instructions on what to do next.
Mary, is a wonderful question as well from Ann Eubanks. The last question in the chat box.
Okay, we've grown, but now some vestry would like to step back because of possible changes. Our priest is on board. I work with him. How do we go forward in the face of a new pushback? A pushback is one of those challenges, you know? It's one of those challenges, and you have to find a loving way to do it. And perhaps this material would help. Perhaps bringing, because I think the way I try to do this with the training videos, with the material, is make it a gracious way, a loving way to address those sorts of things. And I think that if your clergy are on board, and then you know, I think just using the material and getting them to see, and that's why it's so important to bring as many people as you can to do the creative piece, to come up with the ideas so that they get on board and they take part in coming up with the ideas of things that they can do. Should a rector appoint to implement? Thomas, I really believe that kind of comes out of using the material and doing the material, and once you do what I tell you to do with this creative piece, I think you'll see the energy that comes out of that is amazing. A number of our congregations have, once they do that and do the creative piece where they're coming up with all the ideas, a number of our congregations have put just teams together at first, you know, an invite team, a welcome team, and a connect team. And so that one person isn't. In our diocese, though, we have offered grants to hire someone to oversee it. I mean, I know that can't, you know, that doesn't happen in all dioceses, but we're blessed here that we can do that. Example, yeah, pet blessings, yes. What's the postcard website? Yeah, moo.com, MOO.com. Actually, it's a business card, a little small business card that you can put all these images on. And I tell people laughingly that I wish I had bought stock in the company when I first told people to get their cards from moo.com.
Well, thank you, everyone. I know
we're over. Yeah, we're done.
It looks like there's a lot of conversation that's still good questions. So I want to make sure you have Mary's email, which is maryparmer@gmail.com. But before, since we're at the end of the time, I want to thank again everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules and for participating in this wonderful presentation. Mary, I thought you did a wonderful job for your first webinar. We look forward to continuing the conversation about how Newcomer's ministry can grow in the Episcopal Church. So.
And also, everyone, you will find in your inbox, if you check your email, a link to a survey. Please open up this email and click on that link, and it takes just a few minutes to be able to fill out the survey. We very much value and appreciate your feedback. I know Mary does as well, to be able to help us be able to make this more valuable for others in the future, and to be able to continue to offer great resources. Definitely look over this and appreciate your feedback. Again, thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you, Mary, for this great evening. It was fabulous material, and wish you all the best. Please, or myself, or Miguel, or anybody at ECF, or with the Diocese with the Newcomers Ministry Project, we are happy to be there for you to answer your questions. And again, thank you for coming out and taking an hour of your time. God bless. Godspeed in your ministry, and have a blessed evening.
Thank you.
So Mary, again, great job.